Welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who might not know, I'm Bia, and Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and relates to us in today's society as teenagers. Sometimes we read about Spiritist teachings and topics and we don't see how it relates to us, or we don't understand it because we think, oh, that's for adults to understand. But we're almost at the age of adults, and some of us are adults, and we need to start understanding this and learning these things. Because once we learn the basics, we'll be able to expand and learn even more on top of that. For over a year now, we've been going through the Spirits book together, page by page, message by message, reading it so that we fully understand it. And I can't believe it's been a year already that we've been going through this. And just if you guys don't have an actual copy of the book, we're only about halfway done. And how much we've learned in just that year. We have so much more to learn. The Spirits book is split up into 4 main parts. Well, it has the introduction, which as we know, as we read through, it's very long. So there's the introduction, and then there's 4 main parts of the book. And right now, we are currently in the middle of the second part of the book. And the second part of the book talks about the spirit world, or the world of spirits. That's the title of it. The spirit world, or the world of spirits. And so within this part, there's several chapters. And right now we're on chapter 8. And chapter 8 is about the emancipation of the soul. And so what this means is, as we've gone through in the past, but just to go over briefly, the soul, when we say soul, it's the spirit when it's incarnated and it has this material body. So when we're talking about, like right now, our spirit isn't completely free. So right now we'll talk about this spirit that we have as a soul. And then when it goes to the spirit world and it's free from this material body, then it'll just be the spirit. So that's where the word soul is coming from. And the emancipation, so we're talking about the freedom of the soul. So how free is it from our body? Does it have to be with us 24/7? And as we were learning, is that when we are sleeping, the spirit, it's like there's like a wire or a string attaching the soul to this material body. And when we're sleeping, this string can unravel a bit. And so the spirit can go further, and it can see stuff, and it can be free from this material body while our body is just resting. So that's what we were talking about, and we left off in the section where we were discussing the visits between the spirits of living persons. So we're talking about how during sleep, how maybe my spirit, my soul, and someone else, like my best friend, our souls can meet up while we're sleeping. Our spirits can meet up while we're sleeping and have a conversation and communicate with each other. And that's what we were talking about, where we left off last week. And if you did miss last week's, I suggest you go back, because we did start already the first 3 questions, so it makes a lot more sense if you go in order. Question 416. Can people cause spirit visits at will? For example, can they say upon going to bed, "Tonight I wish to meet in spirit with such and such person, to speak with him and her, and tell him and her about such and such thing"? So they're saying, so can you just, before I go to sleep, can I go, okay, today I want to go meet with my best friend Kelly, and I want to talk to her about cheerleading. Can I say that to anyone? Can I say that, and is that going to happen? So the spirits answered, "Here's what actually happens. The person sleeps, and the spirit awakens. But the spirit is often very far from following what the person resolved while awake, because the life of the person interests the spirit very little when it is set free from matter. This applies to individuals who are already quite evolved, though. The others spend their spirit existence in an entirely different manner. These either give in to their passions or remain inactive altogether. Thus, it may happen that, depending on the reason proposed, the spirit may go and visit the desired individual, but the mere desire while it awake to do so is not its only reason for actually doing so." So what they're saying is that when we're attached to this material body, we have very material needs and wants, and sometimes we're not really thinking, but once our spirit is kind of detached, not completely detached, but once it's the string unravels a lot and it can kind of think without this material body and see the bigger picture, it realizes that, okay, what the person was saying isn't really what the best thing to happen is. So it's not just, okay, I want this to happen, so it's going to happen. But maybe if it's actually something that the spirit thinks beneficial, or if the spirit is still less evolved and doesn't know better, then maybe it will, but it's not just because you say it, it's going to happen. Question 417. Can a certain number of incarnate spirits meet and form a gathering? So can there be not just two people, but can there be a lot of spirits, and can they have a gathering, like a whole meeting? And the spirits answered, of course. The bonds of friendships, old or new, frequently reunite a number of spirits who feel happy at being together. So they're saying, so even just friendships, about being happy to be with one another, that kind of brings these spirits together. Maybe they form a group and they talk. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in. He says, the word old refers to the ties of friendships contracted in previous existences. Upon awakening, we bring back an intuition of the ideas we have acquired during such concealed colloquies, even though their sources appear unknown to us. So he's explaining that when they said friendships old and new, the new ones are the ones that we've made in this existence, but the old ones are ones that we've made in past existences, but that when our spirit has unraveled a certain amount, the spirit remembers, and they remember the past existence and their past friends, and they have this harmony with each other. And they also say that when we wake up, we have these ideas in our head. When you wake up and you have an idea, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's not going to be like, oh, so-and-so told me this, and this is exactly what happened. We don't have that clear-cut vision of exactly what happened, but we'll have an idea that kind of refers to, oh, I just had this idea, and I wonder why, and maybe it was because of something that was being said during the night with the spirit. Question 418. If a person believed a friend to be dead, but who in reality was not, could that person meet their friend in spirit, and thus know that she was still alive? In such a case, could this person have an intuition about it upon awakening? So here they're saying, so you think the person's dead, but the person's actually still alive. Could you meet in the spirit world and kind of see if the person's alive or not? And from that, have that intuition when you wake up. So when you wake up, say, oh no, I know they're alive. And the spirits answered, as a spirit, the individual can certainly see the friend and know how she is. If the belief in her death was not meant as a trial, the person will have a presentiment that she is alive, or that she is in fact dead. So the spirit can surely, in the night, go and see how this friend is doing, and see if they're really alive, or if they're dead, if that material body is dead. And they can definitely do that. But here they said, so now we're talking about the part of remembering, of waking up with that intuition that, okay, no, she's alive, or okay, no, she's dead. It's that maybe if it was a trial for you, maybe if it was a trial for you to think that she was dead and to learn something and do something, and then you would find out that she wasn't, or that she was. So maybe this was a trial for you, but if it wasn't a trial for you, and it's just, and so then you can have this intuition so that you know, because there wasn't a trial for you to try and accomplish. But if there is a trial, then you won't have this intuition, because you still need to overcome that trial. So now we're on to the next section in this chapter, and this section is titled, The Concealed Transmission of Thought. And then there's a footnote, and the footnote says, that is, mental telepathy. So basically we're talking about mental telepathy, but they just gave it this big name of the concealed transmission of thought. So this is just one little example of how important it is to not only read the books and read the words in front of you, but to look at the footnotes and to analyze everything and in the context, because little things like that make it a lot easier to understand. Question 419. Why is it that the same idea, a discovery for example, arises at the same time in many places? So how come, let's say, when people were inventing the airplane, How come there was people inventing it in Brazil and people in Europe and people all over? How come they were all doing this at the same time? And that was a time when communication wasn't as easy as it is now. So how come it all happened all at the same time in the same place? And the spirits answered, "We have already stated that during sleep, spirits communicate with one another. Well then, when the body awakens, the spirit remembers what it has learned, and the person thinks he or she has invented it. Thus, many may seem to have discovered the same thing at the same time. When you say that an idea is floating around, you employ a figure of speech that is more precise than you think. Without even suspecting it, everyone has contributed toward developing it." So they're saying, just like how we were talking about before, when friends meet up, well, maybe these scientists or these people who are discovering things, they're also meeting up and they're also talking and they're also bouncing ideas off each other. And so then when they wake up, they just have this intuition. They don't remember that their spirit was talking to this person, so they think, "Wow, I just invented this." But might not be the case because it was an idea that was floating around. It was going to many different places, many different ideas to make it actually happen. And then Allan Kardec put his own comment in, and he said, "In this way, our spirit itself often unknowingly reveals the objects of our waking preoccupations to other spirits." So they're saying here that also kind of goes the other way around, that sometimes, so our spirit kind of also says our ideas. Maybe if we started thinking of one idea, our spirit shares it with another spirit so that we can grow from it. And maybe it was our idea first, maybe it wasn't our idea first, but we're all working together to discover something or to make something better. Question 420. Can spirits communicate with one another when the body is completely awake? So the body is completely awake, like right now, like me talking right now. Can spirits communicate with one another? And the spirits answered, "A spirit is not enclosed in its body, as if it were in a box. It radiates all around in every direction. Hence, it can communicate with other spirits even in the waking state, although it does so with more difficulty." So, sometimes when people think of our body and of the spirit, we think of like our body is like a box, and the spirit is stuck inside of it. But that's not it. The spirit, like they said, it radiates all around. Think of us as the center of the sun. And the spirit is going all out around us. It's like a glow all around us in every direction. So it's not stuck inside this box that doesn't see any light. It can communicate with other spirits, but of course it makes it much more difficult because we aren't in this rest, our body's not in that resting state like when we are sleeping. Question 421. Why do two perfectly awake persons sometimes have the same thought at the exact same time? So two people, they're awake and they just have the same idea at the same exact time. And the spirits answered, "They are two attuned spirits who communicate with each other and read each other's thoughts even when they are not asleep." So what they're saying is that these spirits are attuned. So they're in the same, we've talked about this a lot, they're in the same harmony, they're in the same vibration. So they're thinking the same things, so they can kind of communicate with each other and read each other's thoughts, even when they're not sleeping. And Allan Kardec put his own comment in, and he says, "When spirits meet, there's sometimes a communication of thought that enables two persons to see and understand each other without the need for verbal language. They may be said to speak the language of spirits." So sometimes when the connection is very strong or when they're very similar, their ideas are very similar, they can just communicate that without even needing verbal language. And then they said sometimes that's called the language of the spirit. So just really happening, like we said, we were talking about mental telepathy. Now we are on to the next section in this chapter, and this section is titled Lethargy, Catalepsy, Apparent Death. Question 422. Lethargic and cataleptic individuals generally see and hear what is occurring around them, but they cannot express it. Do they see and hear through the eyes and ears of the body? So, lethargic and cataleptic, these types of people with this illness, they see and hear what's happening around them, but they have no expression to it. They have no reaction. They can't express anything about it. And so the question is, do they see with like the human eyes and the human ears? And the Spirit said, no, through the Spirit. The Spirit is conscious, but it is unable to communicate. So no, they're seeing it through the Spirit because their material body is really damaged. Their material body is really damaged. So they're not seeing it, they're not processing it through their eyes, they're not processing it through their ears, but their spirit is processing it, but the Spirit has no way of communicating it once it has processed it. And there's a second part to this question, and it says, why is it unable to communicate? And the Spirit answered, the state of the body prevents it. This peculiar state of the organs proves to you that there is something more than to a human being than just a body, because although the body is not functioning, the Spirit continues to act. So what they're saying is, so the Spirit can't communicate because the body can't produce anything. The Spirit can't use the voice because it's not going to work. So even though the Spirit is processing everything, the body isn't allowing the Spirit to communicate. And this also goes to show, for people who may not believe in spirits, it goes to show that there is something more than just the body, because there's something that's understanding even when the body is completely incapable. So even though the body is incapable of any action, the Spirit is still in motion. The Spirit is still acting. Question 423. In the state of lethargic, can the Spirit separate itself entirely from the body in such a way as to give the body all the appearance of death and then return to it? So they're saying, so in the state of lethargy, can the Spirit just completely separate itself so that the body looks just completely dead? But then can it come back? And the Spirit answered, the body is not dead in the lethargic state, because there are functions that continue to operate. So the body isn't dead in this state because there's some things that are still working. Although there's a lot of things that aren't, some things still are working. Vitality remains in a latent state, like in a cocoon, but it is not extinguished. The Spirit is always connected to the body while the body is alive. But once the ties are broken by real death and by the decomposition of the organs, the separation is complete and the Spirit no longer returns. So what they're saying here is that when the body is actually dead, the Spirit can't come back. So if the body is dead, that's it. If the ties are completely broken, the Spirit cannot come back to the body. But when they say the appearance of death, is that some it might appear dead, but some of the organs are still working, so it's not actually dead. And then they continue. When an apparent dead body comes back to life, it is because death has not actually consummated. So sometimes it just, like when we see people in comas, it's more relatable to us because most of us do not see lethargic people all the time. But we do hear a lot about people in comas. And they seem to be unresponsive, and at some points they seem to be dead. But then we say they come back to life, but they don't come back to life because the Spirit never detached. The body was never dead. If the body was dead, then the Spirit wouldn't be able to come back. Question 424. Through care given in time, can one strengthen the ties that are about to break and bring back life to a being who, without such attention, would definitely die? So through care, can someone caring for you, loving for you, can that strengthen the bonds so that body doesn't die? Can that strengthen it and bring that person back to life, sort of, that they weren't dead yet, but kind of give them some more energy, give them some more hope so that they don't die, even though they might have died if they didn't have any attention. And the Spirit said, "Yes, of course. You have evidence of this every day. In such cases, magnetism is often a very powerful means because it gives the body the vital fluid it needs to keep its organs functioning." So, as we talked about way in the beginning when we were talking about kind of the sciencey part and the technical part, that yes, this transferring of this good energy, of this vital fluid, it helps the organs keep functioning. And this love and care definitely can help a person not die as quickly. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, "Lethargy and catalepsy have the same principle, which is the temporary loss of sensitivity and motion due to an unyet explained psychological cause. They differ from each other in that, in lethargy, the suspension of the vital forces is generalized and gives the body all the appearances of death, while in catalepsy it is localized and can affect a larger or smaller portion of the body, so as to leave the intelligence free of expressing itself, a fact that would not permit it to be confused with death. Lethargy is always natural. Catalepsy is sometimes spontaneous, but it may also be artificially induced and be done by magnetic action." So here he was just giving us some more distinctions. So lethargy and catalepsy, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the body kind of not being able to function. But in lethargy, it's the whole body. Just, it looks completely dead. Like, it's not functioning at all. There is some parts functioning. We know that it's not actually dead. But there's all the appearances of death. And the whole body is just kind of frozen. Can't do anything. In catalepsy, however, though, it's localized. So maybe it can be a large part. Maybe it can be below the waist. But maybe it's just a smaller part. So that isn't affecting everything. But what's really important for us to remember is that even when we see these people, especially just for us in everyday society, when we see people who have disabilities or who are in these types of states, we have to know that maybe that it's just their physical body that's having these damages, that has these defects, and that their spirit is still working. Their spirit is still processing things, and their spirit is still living. Of course, the spirit will never die. So although just maybe this body that they have right now may be damaged or defective, it's not their spirit. It's not who they are. So that's the end of that section, and next week we're going to move on to the section about somnambulance. But before we leave off today, I'd like to leave off with our daily book of positive quotations by Linda Picone for today's date, September 19th. This one's titled Compliment. "I can live for 2 months on a good compliment." We might not think a casual compliment means all that much, but consider how we feel after someone tells us we've done a good job, we look good today, or that they admire one of our many fine qualities. We hold our head a little higher, smile a little more broadly, and step a little more brightly. When someone gives us a compliment, we tend to think better of them too. Clearly, they're smart and insightful. I enjoy it when someone gives me a compliment, and why not? It prompts me to give compliments as well. So maybe we can all take this message and throughout this week try and give as many compliments as we can. And when we receive compliments, be happy about it. And I hope you are all doing well in school. And if at all you need any help, questions, comments, concerns, anything about the Spirits book, spirits-related topics, school topics, anything that's going on in your life and you just need someone to talk to, feel free to email me at kardecradioforteens@gmail.com and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.